Hey everyone, it's Melody here with Design by Melody. I just want to apologize from the beginning. I have a bit of a sore throat, so if I sound a little scratchy and not quite as upbeat, that's why. So, anyways, I am going to start this layout by flipping through a ton of papers, trying to figure out exactly what I want to do. So I have these simple stories, like 6 by 12 strips that you see off to the right side. And I want to use those because they look very Thanksgiving ish to me. Just with the browns, the crafts, the more neutral tones, I suppose, just made me really think about Thanksgiving. So in thinking about that, I was trying to figure out what I can use as the 12 by 12 background. So I really considered this kind of teal wood grain, and I went and found the 12 by 12 sheet because all I had was this kind of like 9 by 12, I suppose, piece, and I just wasn't really happy with it. And in pulling that out, I came across this diagonal, and I thought, ooh, this kind of looks pretty cool, but it's so far outside my comfort zone, I just wasn't sure. So, I just decided eventually just to go for it. I mean, worst case scenario, I have to print my photos again and scrapbook this again, which is not a big deal at all. I have so many photos to print, it's ridiculous. So adding 2 more photos to that pile would not be a bad thing at all. So I said, you know what, let's just go for it. Let's see where this goes and just go with it. I've been kind of in a kick recently that I want to do some bright and lighter scrapbooking, I suppose. And so that's a little bit more difficult whenever you're scrapbooking fall photos because they're usually not so bright and colorful. So I've been trying to figure out a balance between it, and including both types of colors on this layout was my balance. So I've cut down one of the 4 by 6 photos. One was vertical, one was horizontal, which also presented a different type of problem on this layout. So I just decided to cut this one down and make it a smaller photo. And I'm going to kind of play around with a couple different placements for it. I have this small journaling block here, and it was on a tag that was printed on a 4 by 6 card. And so I'm just cutting it out. I left it on the 4 by 6 card because I wasn't sure if I wanted to use it as a part of the design of the page, but in the end I decided just like the tag. So this is kind of the basis of the layout, and I do struggle with this layout quite a bit because it's just, I didn't know what I wanted to do with it, especially since I'm using some different colors than what I would normally, different color combinations of what I would normally use. So I really am going to try a bunch of different things here. And trying this little pennant shape is one of those things that I try. It was just too big to put under that, but it would have been a nice layer coming out from under that 6 by 12 strip. I end up pulling out this border strip. Excuse me. Sorry, I had to stop a moment there and get some water. But I end up pulling out this border strip to kind of use just as a separation piece at the bottom of the 6 by 12 strip here. So what these photos are, these are from a Thanksgiving breakfast that Kaylin's preschool hosts every November. And I happened to be away on a work trip during this one, so I was so upset about not being able to make it to this breakfast. And Ernest had to go, and it's usually not his type of thing to go to preschool events like this. So it was really a big deal to me that I wasn't there and that he went instead of me. It ended up being just fine. I had no reason to worry at all, but I don't know. I just wanted it to be, special for Kaylin, and yeah, I was upset that I wasn't there. I was actually in Atlanta at the time for work, so for a couple of days, so I completely missed it. But I was able to pull a few photos off of the preschool's Shutterfly account, and that's what these are. They're not the best pictures. Neither one of them are really looking at either of the pictures, but it's the only pictures I have from that day, and I definitely wanted to scrapbook them. And then I just have the little bit of journaling there, and so I'm still kind of playing around. I mean, you can see this is taking me quite some time to kind of get together here, get my thoughts together. I've played around a lot with the darker colors and I haven't really tied in any of the bright colors, and this is where I'm going to do that. So I like this 4x6 card, and it has a great sentiment. It says, "So very thankful," and so I'm actually going to end up using that as my title, but I've got to figure out a way to make it fit into the layout because it just looks like I stuck it on there right at the top. So I'm going to really, try a couple of different things here. And what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to pull out a frame and that has a scallop on the outside and use it to kind of back that "So Very Thankful" card. It just gives it a little bit more weight and it makes it fit a little bit more. Plus it pulls in some more of the white that's in the background paper and that's also around the photos. There was this little saying on one of the cards that said ... "In everything give thanks," and I thought it would be fitting as a subtitle, and so I cut it into a pennant shape, but it just gets lost there on that paper, so I'm going to mat it on this teal paper here, this teal wood grain. All of these colors, even though they're from a bunch of different collections, they all complement each other very well. I really like the mix of the traditional Thanksgiving colors with the browns and the kind of mustardy yellows and darker reds with the brighter colors, the bright green, the teal, the yellow, the pink. I just like the mix for whatever reason. I'm going to trim this card down just a little bit, and you're going to see here in a minute, I'm going to get stuck and I'm going to stop and walk away from the layout for a little bit. And what I end up doing is I decide to pull out my sewing machine. It's been quite some time since I've actually pulled out my sewing machine. And so this is the layout that's going to get, it's going to come out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to first stitch along the outside of that 6x12 sheet because there's already faux stitching on there anyways. And then I'm also going to stitch under each, like do a double line under each of the words on the title card here. I think it's just going to tie it in a little bit better to the rest of the layout because it's going to have stitching on it just like the rest of the layout does. And then I'm also going to stitch under that subtitle that says "In everything give thanks." And again, that's just to tie it together. So they'll be stitching on 3 different parts of this layout. This is pretty much the basis. I'm going to add a few more things like this bit of washi. I'm going to add it here and I'm going to put the banner on top of that. This kind of sets it off a little bit so it's a little bit more noticeable against the brown background paper. And then I'm also going to put a bit of this washi up under the "So Very Thankful." I felt like there was a bit of trapped white space, even though it's not really, it's definitely not white, but it's just kind of trapped space there with the diagonal paper, and you can't really tell so much in the video, but it's definitely noticeable in person that there is something there, that it's not just a gap where the diagonal paper is showing through. So I have not glued anything down really as far as my photos and my journaling spot, because this is where I'm thinking, okay, I've just got to do something, and so this is where I just thought about the stitching, and you can see here where I did the stitching. And I just went right over that brown sticker since it's just a layering part of it anyways. It's not a big deal that the stitching is over top of that. And I've also already taped down, after I do sewing, I always tape down the threads on the back of the layout just so they're not loose, they don't get pulled or anything like that. Put out my little box of sequins, my little handy dandy box of sequins, and I get this little pill box from the Container Store. It's perfect. I have one that I use for enamel dots that I made myself out of perler beads, and then I have one that I use for sequins, which is what I pulled out for this one. So I've got kind of and I believe it's from the Atlantic collection from Studio Calico from a couple years ago. I've got a mustardy yellow, a wood grain, and then later I'm going to pull out a white sequin to use as well. I'm going to pop dot this photo. The other one is not going to be pop dotted, but this one is, and it's mostly just because of the tab. I wanted to give it a little bit of dimension, plus it's a smaller photo, so I thought it would be nice to have a little bit extra weight here. I do have the two photo corners on that 4x6 card. I'm going to glue down my journaling here. And I'm going to take out this date sticker, and it's actually going to go in the very bottom corner. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see it or if I'm going to have to, there you go. All right, so I'm going to put the date, and it's actually, I had to go look at the computer, which is where you're going to see the pause here, but it's actually November 20th, 2013. So I'm going to put that date on there. And I've really been into using my Sharpie pens on my layouts recently. I don't really know why, but I've just been into them. I guess because I don't really have some good scrapbooking pens to use. I want to get the Staedtler pens from Target. They have like a huge pack of them, but I don't know. It just seems expensive to me, and I'm obviously kind of frugal. Well, I was going to say cheap, but frugal sounds a little bit better when it comes to buying stuff. So, I've been holding off for quite some time. I keep saying, well, maybe they'll go on sale. Maybe they'll go on sale. But yeah, that hasn't happened yet. So eventually I'm just going to break down and buy them. I'm adding a few different sticker elements here. I added a little tab to the bigger photo that says keepsake. I already added the tab onto the small photo, and it says happy boy is what I wrote on it. There's a little arrow pointing to the small photo on the right side of it that says little moments. And this is where I'm looking at, okay, well, I need a third embellishment to go with these sequins. What can I use? I have these chipboard circles that I play around with, and the green would have worked because it matched, but I didn't like the sayings on them. One had like a pound sign, one had a 5. They didn't mean anything, so I don't know, it seemed weird to me to have them on there. This is where I'm pulling out these frames, and I bought these frames because I thought they were really cool, but I had a really difficult time using them. And it's going to take me quite some time to figure out how to get this layered behind that. I cut it, and then I piece it back together, and then the inside of the piece back together is part is too close because I had already sewn it on, and I had some adhesive behind it, but it was more so because I had already sewn it on. I had to make sure that it would fit around all the sewn parts. Pre-planning this would have been a little bit better, but I didn't do that at all. Hey, it works still. And these are fancy pants. Are these fancy pants? I believe they're fancy pants frames. I've had them for a really long time. All right, so this is where I'm like, okay, there's this like corner that I don't like, and I can't take it up because it's already sewn down, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with it. And I'm like, okay, well, let me just cut off here because it looks funny ending the way it did. All right, so that's looking good. And now that I look at it, it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't bother me looking at it now. But when I was actually in the moment on the scrapbooking, I'm just like, oh, there's this space and it just looks awful. So I'm going to come up with a solution here in a second. I'm going to add a few of these puffy hearts. I've got 3. One down by the journaling, one on this tab, and one at the top by the title. Alright, so this is where I'm like, this space is really bugging me. I just kept coming back to it. So even though it's sewn down, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of this washi tape, the same washi tape I used right there before, and just continue the strip. What the problem was is that the strip didn't continue under the 4x6 photo. It stopped before like right under the T under Thankful. That's where it stopped. So there was a point where it was just not covered by washi, but there were a bunch of corners that were coming together, and I just didn't like it. So I'm going to layer another piece. We'll kind of piece together a piece right under that and cover up the cutoff part of the scallop border, and then it'll just continue under the photo. It just makes the ending of that scallop less harsh. You could tell I keep pointing to it. It's like bugging me as I'm going along. So this is where I'm like, okay, well, I've already done this stitching, so I have to really piece it together, and I can't fit it up under anything. All right, here we go. And then I'm like, okay, now it's too long. This is really difficult. It should not have taken me that long to figure out how to put this tiny piece of washi there, but it did. All right, there we go. It's in there. We're good. I'm just fitting another piece in this little tiny gap here that was not covered. And you can't even tell because it's a real not bold washi, like it's a real subtle washi. It's really easy to just kind of piece together pieces. You can't even tell. All right, so this pretty much finishes up the layout. Now I've got a small insert for you. In flipping through all the 4x6 cards, I really liked a lot of the sayings, so I'm going to take two of them, one on the front and one on the back, and just add them in. And I had this piece of 12x12 I want to say photo sleeve. It's not a photo sleeve. Sheet protector that I had cut apart and made into a smaller one. So I'm just using the scraps of this one, and I'll be stitching my little pocket together and adding tabs to the side. So I'm just going to show you the beginning part of it here, and then I'm going to skip to the end where it's already embellished so you can see. I'm just going to add a small title here, and I was looking through all my alphas just to see what would fit and what I have. I end up settling on some October Afternoon alphas, and they're just the little tile ones that are pink, but they're too wide, so I end up having to trim them down, and it just takes me quite a bit of time, so I stopped the recording so you didn't have to watch all of that. And what it's going to say is fall favorites at the very top. And this is where I start that. I'll go ahead and read it to you as I'm working on it. And it says fall favorites, crisp autumn leaves, fall delight, pumpkin spice, baked apple pie, delicious autumn, harvest happiness, and bushels of fun. And I do add a few hearts to this one as well. And on the back side, I'll go ahead and read that to you as well. It says, gratitude, give thanks for everything that is good and wonderful. I just thought both of these were really pretty kind of reminders of fall and of Thanksgiving. I just thought it would be really nice to have those. So this is where I'm realizing, okay, these are too fat. I'm going to have to trim them down. And so that's what I'm ended up doing. But I'm going to cut the camera off to do it so you don't have to watch all of it. Alright, and here's the completed one. I've slowed it down so you can see it, and you can stop and read it, but that's exactly what I've read to you. And I have put my tabs on here. All I did was take that piece that I had cut off of one of the papers earlier, fold it in half and punch holes in it, and then I'll go back and staple those tabs right onto my little pocket here. Alright, well thanks for watching. Please give me a thumbs up if you like this video and these layouts, and then subscribe as well so you can see what's coming up next. Alright, thanks. Bye.